Okay, this is not a hangout. This is just my way of doing quick upload. I tried the actual quick upload and it still doesn't work for me, so that's that. Um, so this is to Quintica, but also in general, not really specifically. I'm not going to think of just like things Quintica has said or anything. It's more general than that, but it's related to Quintica in that it's a redo because that video had a lot of gaps in the audio. And I haven't made notes. I've just thought about a little bit what I wanted to say, so you're going to have to bear with me now. I guess the first thing here is that for any kind of activism, including feminism, I'm going to look for, as I've said, what I consider action in the real world, making some change in the society, and I'm going to look at what kind of actions might make sense. That's how I'm going to judge the activism as such, right? I'm not going to look at the people in a current generation or current time and judge what the appropriate activism is in that area, right? If there's a bunch of labor leaders in a particular era that think that the workers should just shut up and accept what they've been given or whatever, that's not going to change my mind on what I think needs to happen in the area, say, of labor rights. Right. So that's a primary thing for me. I mean, I'm going to look at something like feminism as a question of, is there a reason to fight for women's rights? Can we forward all human rights by finding a place that is where women's rights are violated and repair those, just as we would find children's rights that are violated and repair those, just as we'd find people that are enslaved, labor rights, whatever situation that we think needs, whether it's right-based or not. Like, I don't think that healthcare is a right-based thing. It's just a matter of something that people should have decent healthcare. So you want to figure out what you can do to arrange for that situation to happen as naturally as possible, which really just means sustainably. So, I think it's a reasonable thing, and considering that clearly on a global level there is room for feminism. Now, the other thing I wanted to, so that's just a basic thing. I will talk about particular people and celebrities, but we could spend, infinite amount of years pointing out people that, like, that's an MRM, but aren't they hideous in this respect? Oh, that's a conservative. Isn't they hideous in this? Here's a liberal that's hideous. That's not really a way to delve into the ideas, in my opinion. All right. Now, having said that, I really wish that people would understand this idea of the patriarchy. So there's this idea in the liberal side of the man, the patriarchy, some sort of controlling structure, and the way in which people that might individually not know each other seem to work together in concert for these kind of aims, as if there's this overarching personality metaphor or framework that is guiding some of the least defensible attitudes that you find in human society, in Western society. Okay, so this is what the feminists are calling the patriarchy. What George Lakoff has studied and called the strict father metaphor. And basically, it's a feudalistic framework. It's a feudalistic way of looking at things. So the patriarchy is the feminist perspective on this, where, they've noticed a thing. It's not that all men are superior to all women. It's really a feudalistic idea, right? The queen is above the stable master, right? What the feminists have noticed and point out by calling it a patriarchy is that at every level, there's classes in this system. And within every level class, the men are given superior roles. And that's the day-to-day life. So, if you're the queen, subsidiary to the king. If you're the stable master. So I have subsidiary to the stable master. You're the nurse, subsidiary to the doctor, so on and so forth. Right. And so that's a repeating structure, but by no means does it mean that the stable master is above the princess, right? Or even that the prince is above the queen. Doesn't mean that, right? So there's a lot of ironic things that people that are complaining about the feminists at the moment don't seem to understand when they say, like, one common thing is to point out, well, more men get killed. Well, that's right. But see, this is a part of this feudalistic structure. The feudalistic structure in which the lord is a father figure for his realm, and the young sons are like knights, and they're supposed to risk themselves in defense of the realm and at the bequest and really whatever arbitrary judgments of the Lord King strict father. And that's what they're supposed to do. So like men suffer from these roles because it's really about there's a gender and rank and job, all these arbitrary biases that many of us have shed, but there's still this idea of a framework that we're having to deal with, an overall one, however much we loosen its details. And within this framework, yeah, you know, the gender roles are both ways. If a boy wants to be sensitive, play with dolls, it's not acceptable, let alone if he wants, you know, to be attracted to men. But I just mean a heterosexual boy that wants to show these tendencies that have been assigned, whether they statistically are more common in women or not. It's like, that's the problem. I mean, if 60% of guys are a certain way and like sports, well, that doesn't mean the 40% should just buck it up and pretend to like sports. It would be a men's right activism to break that. Now, the thing about feminism is it's one of the few areas, one of the few realms of activism that is attacking this metaphorical structure head on, that this is the problem, this way of thinking of things, you know, and it's related to heroes and villains and damsels and all of this stuff. So, you know, having said that, yeah, I would go ahead and condemn people. People are like taking that woman that shot Andy Warhol seriously. Yeah, she's terrible. Easy to say that. But then you go after Anita Sarkeesian, and she's no angel. But as I say, she's just a low watt, you know, semi-intellectual. And if I ever met her, I'd try to explain that. I'm not even saying that as a bad thing. It's like she's making a very reasonable point any common sense person could make. It's not a subtle, super genius point. And people are denying that the tropes and metaphors that you find in fiction matter, that they have meaning. It's like, do people not realize that the people out there making these things for fun and profit, you know, they have a theory of what it all means? You think they just randomly do it and you like one thing and not another, and there's no reasons or rhyme to what you're responding to? There is, and it's related to your cultural upbringing in a lot of ways. And there's familiar stories that get to be told over and over again, like these damsel in distress stuff. Now, that doesn't mean you have to stop this stuff. Many people discover these tropes and things and do a new play on them, or use them for satire, or reinvent them in a serious way, or don't validate them but take them as a cultural artifact that's important or even worth preserving. Maybe as an illusion, maybe something you can see past, but that operates like a myth, as a lesson. And subtle things that you can do with these historical ideas, basically, that we get from society, that philosophers would call received opinions, right? And being able to analyze art and see these tropes, it's just a matter of being able to analyze the received opinions. The idea that those received opinions are just the truth, that's an illusion. They're just things you were told, and if you let them become assumptions and can't question them, then you know less about the world in which you are operating. So someone like Anita Sarkeesian saying, hey, you know, for example, she pointed out in one thing I noticed, she had a string of the video games where the prostitutes say, hey, I'd do you for free, big boy. Okay, yeah, this is a part of this little, like, it's like a dancing monkey cranking a thing and it makes a music box. I mean, it's just a gimmick, a vaudeville gimmick. because of the emotional needs and sexual frustrations of so many men, that joke is at least passable, right? And that at a certain age of adolescence, it might be like, yeah, but you would, and elicit response, But at the very least, it's acceptable. And why? Because of this whole framework of who is for what. What is the purpose of the stable master? What is the purpose of the king? What is the purpose of the prince? What is the purpose? What is the role? What is everybody supposed to do? And how are they supposed to act? What sex are they supposed to be? And who are they supposed to defer to? That whole system, this feudalistic one that we've gotten, a hierarchical one, all right, that's this strict father metaphor of politics, where the nation or community is a family with the strict father lord at the top, the nurturant and forgiving queen at the not quite top, and so on and so forth down unto the peasants and rabble and human resources of that domain, right? Of that that kingdom, right? So this is a real structural artifact that we have today. The ruins of it has been ruined a lot, but still we dwell in the ruins of this ancient metaphor, and it's just as damaging to little boys as telling them how to be. It's telling them to be sports heroes and whatnot. It's telling them this is, you should be tough, and all of these old stereotypes of how you should be. And who's fighting that? Who made it okay for men to cry? Men's rights activists? No, they're relatively young. They should be worried about proving themselves, accomplishing something. It was women that have done that. If there's paternity leave in Europe, that's feminism and gender activism from the feminists, with men helping, looking out for these kinds of issues that break down the hierarchy. Now, if there's going to be a generation of Twitter feminists that just can't say anything except for Twitter, well, let's call them Twitter feminists, because I think their time on Earth will be relatively short. In my experience as an almost 50-year-old person, the people that really get things done and accomplish things in the real world, practical things, decent things that just help people a little, generally, at a time, or even just a thought that counts, get it out there in the world. Those people have a lot longer lasting power than people that are just blogging until they get married and have a family, or blogging until they finally find a job, or, like instead of video games. So I would like to be able to discuss this metaphor and the fact that as cultures, we share ideas, roles of what it means to be a father in that society, and there might be more than one of them, but there's separate little systems. What is the role of the doctor versus the nurse? What's the role of the healer? What's the role? Is there a role for the midwife? In medicine, industry, everything, we have these ideas of these roles, and we have some really general purpose ones that we use to model our society. I think any family metaphor, Lakoff himself says, well, if you use a nurturant family metaphor, you get the liberal thing. And I think any family metaphor is way too condescending for the people. The people cannot be visualized as the children, and end up with a good metaphor, even if the parents are kindly, even if they're not strict. If they're parents, maybe they probably should be strict. I think it's more like we have to see our society as a body, and different, the cops are the white blood cells, and the FDA is the liver or whatever, that we have these kinds of specialties where there is specialization, but not so much hierarchy. Even the idea that the brain does some command and control, with certain actions. On the other hand, it's not commanding and controlling how the liver processes impurities and, in the blood and bodily fluids. The liver, manages that on its own, basically. So I think that's the metaphor we should be going, but people don't really get it. But it's a symptom of our stunted evolution that we are stuck with this family metaphor at all. And I think it's pretty undeniable that calling it the patriarchy, well, yeah, it makes sense. That's where this Boys should go be war heroes and or, sports heroes. Girls should be cheerleaders and or damsels that choose which boy they want to have protect them and so on. All that bullshit, it is still around. And it's part of a whole metaphorical framework of who belongs, what kind of roles there are in a situation, heroes and sidekicks and the girlfriends and stuff. And it doesn't really help if you were to make video games or movies where, oh, a woman can be in a traditionally male role. No, the whole stupid romantic thing of the heroes and the demons is just, it's bullshit. It's tired. It's history. It's going to go. Don't hang too much on it. Your great-grandchildren will find it just as bullshit as any other fairy tale stuff you find silly. So it's my accurate prediction. And if you want to see if I'm right, just live long enough. It's my advice.